We want to welcome you back to another episode of Between Us and Y'all. I'm Yasmin.
I'm Nafis.
And this is Between Us and Y'all, a safe space for mothers and their young adult sons to have healthy conversations. We are so grateful to have some wonderful guests here today, and they're going to introduce themselves shortly. And they're also going to be taking the spotlight for our time that we have for sharing information about local businesses. So guests, if you can introduce yourselves.
Peace, y'all. I'm Eli Lakes.
My name is Liza Garza. Eli is my son.
And I'm Ezra Lakes.
And that's my other son. This is my oldest. This is my second oldest. These are my guys.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Just a little bit?
We're all from. Born and raised in Flint, Michigan. We live in Atlanta now. And we are a family of people who love art and appreciate art. Art has been one of the means that we come together and learn about each other and experience joy.
What is your work?
Oh, my work. I specifically am a musician, a singer-songwriter, a poet, a designer. I facilitate a lot of stories and circles and conversations around love and identity. I'm fascinated by love, and so a lot of my work is centered in love.
Cool. This is Eli speaking. I'm a musician, singer-songwriter, and producer. And I'm also one half of the band Grow, which is me and my mother Liza together.
Ooh.
This is Ezra speaking, and I'm kind of in the middle of figuring out what I'm going to do and what I am doing. But I know that I enjoy a few things. I enjoy being around them a lot and helping them out with whatever questions they have about music, and also play basketball here and there.
Yeah. Okay. And how can people be in contact with you if they'd like to support your businesses?
We do document most of our journey via Instagram. That's where you'll find us the most. Like, we have websites and all of that, but if you're looking for us, it would be at either Liza Garza, or
at Eli Lakes.
Or his brand is actually a basketball, it's a sports brand, kind of like a sports brand. And his brand is Free Buckets. So it's at Free Buckets. It's like what his shirt says for those people.
For our listeners who can't see Ezra right now, he has a shirt on that says Free Buckets. And Eli, you have a shirt on too. What does your shirt say?
My shirt says "My ancestors are proud," which
and
is
that one of your shirts?
This is not my shirt per se, but you feel me? It's in the family business.
Okay. Yeah. And if people want to order that, they can also find that through connecting with y'all on Instagram.
Yes.
Most definitely.
That's what's up. All right, and Liza, you also have earrings and face masks and all types of things like that.
Yeah, everything. Necklaces and skirts and jewelry and poems, and it goes for days and days. I'm grateful for the art of expressing.
That's what's up. All right, thank you all for sharing. I know that all of our listeners will be able to support y'all because you have different things that everybody would be interested in. So I like that. And I want to make sure that our guests are aware that our topic today is called Dropping Out. And we are specifically focusing on the area of unschooling and what we're calling uncareering. And we created that word because this is an artist family. This is a family who has created their own lane in so many different ways. They are entrepreneurs, they're thinkers, free thinkers, and they are doing that in a beautiful way. You know, if you could see them right now, you can see what I see. You know, but I know Liza, I've known her for years to be an amazing parent, you know, to her children, and a committed parent, a community member. And I wanted to make sure we had her voice here today for this particular topic. So we're going to start with our first standard question that we have for all of our guests. And this question is about a motto. And our family motto is to work hard, pray hard, and love hard. We try to incorporate that in everything that we do. Do y'all have a family motto? And if so, what is it?
So we don't necessarily have a family motto, but we do have things that we keep in rotation, right? Like values that we just remind each other to. One of the things that we always tell each other upon leaving the house is remember who you are, right? If one of us leaves, one of us will say to the other one, remember who you are. And so that's something that keeps us grounded and rooted. Another value that we just have is just, we really believe in transparency. So sharing deeply and honestly from the heart and kind of like checking each other, you know what I'm saying? But checking each other with the intention of lifting each other up. So we don't have necessarily like a motto, but we do have like guiding values and principles that all resonate with us.
Yeah, I would say it's probably like, remember who you are, be grateful,
Oh yeah, gratitude is huge.
and transparency.
Would you say there's any other guiding thing?
I think you pretty much covered it.
And the other thing too is like fun. You know what I'm saying? It's like, remember who you are and have as much fun as you possibly can.
Yeah.
You know? So
That was that part.
yeah.
That's the part I like.
Yeah, we support that all the way too with our play hard. We play hard when we do all of our work. We pray and we love. We make sure that we spend some time playing as well. So I appreciate that, and I love that. You know, that's definitely something our listeners can take, you know, as a way of life and to incorporate in their family's life if they don't have a set model that they're following. You know, so I like that. So our next question has to do with homeschooling, and this is where the unschooling part comes in. So many families and many of our listeners have opted into the option of homeschooling, or what many refer to as unschooling. Can you please share with us what that process has been like for you as a mom, and then young men, if you could share with us what the process has been like for you?
So I went to school in Flint, Michigan. Personally, I went to a public school.
Okay.
And my personal experience is that I did not like school. Like, and I did very well at school though. Like I was, you know, in advanced courses, and I was like, I did well at school, but I didn't ever want to be there. Like I would rather be home. When I got older and I had my kids, I did put them in public school as well, and they went to public school for a good while. Y'all went to private school for a little bit, but the complete experience of them being at school, I felt, was like, it was dividing. It was a division for all of us, whether it was the crazy amounts of homework that they gave that took up so much time from like personal family life, whether it was just not understanding like their experience being Black or brown young men. Like it was like sending them to strangers, really was the constant feeling. And you could never catch up from them being gone all day long, every day. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of just exhausting. So that's what kind of just changed my whole understanding and direction, and really just me wanting to have more time with them. As a mama who's a full-time artist, I was just really seeking a way to have them with me. Like, how can we just benefit from each other and love each other and learn each other too? So I took them out of school. We moved a little bit. I've lived here. I've lived in Texas. I've lived in Flint. So we did move, and I don't even know what grade that they came out, but it was elementary that they came out of public school. And since then, we've kind of just been life schooling. They go on the road with me. They've been coming on the road with me since a very early age, been involved in all types of artistic practices, and God willing, like, have just had like a more expansive experience when it comes to what matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. How's that been for you, young man?
You want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. All right. I think that's been like really, really, really like beautiful, and kind of like I think it should be valued more, because a lot of people and like young men don't really have that. It's very strict sometimes, the whole school thing. And then from a very young age, you get put into school. Then you go to school when you're a kid to you're 18. Then you go to college. And if you talk about like, you know, what you want to do with your life, there is no what you want to do with your life if you go from school to college to a job, you know? So I'm really blessed that she's my mom, and that we were able to even have this whole dynamic of me, you know, being close to her and knowing the differences. Because it's not like I was just raised in that. I was raised in that, knowing what public school and private school and this all held, like the differences between all of them. So I can kind of see in everything. Yeah.
Okay.
For me, it's really interesting and tight. I got up to like 7th or 8th grade before, like right before high school years, really. And then after that, after 7th grade, we moved, and we were in like a transition period. And through that in my high school years is really when like the whole life school thing started to come into play, you know. And at that time, we weren't even calling it anything like that. Mostly, it was just like you were saying, like, you know, I was playing the guitar at that point, and art was really coming into play, and I was started going on tour with my mom at like age 14 as her guitarist.
Wow.
So it was a lot of my schooling and a lot of just my education about life and about like, yeah, and about art and about how to be out in the world really was cultivated around those years, you know, when we moved and then when I started touring at such a young age, you know.
And like different artistic communities too, like the opportunity to be around different communities of people and see the commonalities, right? There's an artist community, and then there's our Atlanta community, and within even Atlanta, there's how many different communities that navigate and that intersect. So
yeah, I think one of the big things about it though, for me specifically, is how grateful I am for also being able to like experience public school and like private school and like being in those environments. It really helped me socially, I feel, you know, like being able to interact with other people, and it's what allows me to be like the social person that I am today, you know. That contributed from a young age, for sure.
Wow, it's so many of our listeners who are looking for ways to do exactly what you've already done, you know, so this information is very helpful to hear from you as the mother and the young adult men, because oftentimes we don't hear from the children who have been homeschooled, you know, or gone through life school. We just hear from the parents usually, or we hear about a child getting an award or whatever, you know, refusing vaccinations, whatever the thing is. We usually just hear, you know, something after, you know, they've been schooled. We don't usually hear about the process. So I appreciate you all sharing that. And it sounds amazing, you know, to be able to have the freedom and a parent who has paid attention to your needs, you know, and said, this is what our family needs, and actually acts on it. So I think that's dope. Nafis has our next question.
For our next question is,
Speak up a little bit.
do you engage in conversation with each other about the process of unschooling? And just please share some of those insights of those conversations. Just what
it looks like. Have you ever talked to them about what you were planning, or do you guys talk about, you know, the results, or however that conversation goes, or whatever the topics are? That's what we would like to know.
Well, I don't know. It looks a lot of different. Even the way we think about education looks really different when we talk about it. Like sometimes, like our education really isn't talking about, like, you know,
Academics,
the actual school work or the actual work that we've done, or like my brother, he's done like some schooling programs, and he's like set goals with that, and like, oh, I'm about to go do this school, like actual schoolwork, and read this and write this and whatnot. But most of the time, like our educational process deals with like how we're expanding our art or our brand, or like our music, you know.
And I think too, just like the perspective, right? How you're expanding your perspective. How are you engaging with life in a way that maybe you weren't before because you were in school? I think sometimes society is fed this thing like, you can't do it unless you get the certificate to do it. You can't do it unless you get a diploma. You know, you can't get a job unless you get a diploma, and it's not true. You know, you can't. Just that those barriers don't exist. I mean, if you want them to, and if you believe that they do, then they do. You know what I mean? Like if you believe you got to get this diploma before you, or this certificate to do yoga before you really know anything about yoga, then you're going to go and work for that paper instead of like the passion of learning and growing. And, you know, a lot of things to me are just about the act of, the practice of, you know what I'm saying? If you've never had a plant, you don't really have to go research what you have to do with the plant. If you buy a plant, you're going to learn something, you know?
You learn how to care for it, exactly.
I'm a big advocate and firm believer in qualified, not certified.
Okay. Tell us a little more about that. What do you mean by that?
Voice got deeper. Did you hear that? That was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Okay, go ahead. Tell us a little bit more.
Just, you know, like there's some, like, you don't really have to, just exactly what it is, you know, like I know personally I'm qualified to do a lot of jobs, but that doesn't necessarily mean somebody gave me a certificate to be able to do it,
Yeah.
or like, and I'm also not expecting that from other people, I go based off like how you work, if we're collaborating or if we're doing something together, it's not about like, oh man, your accolades or like what you've done, but it's like your quality of work. And if I could tell you're passionate,
I love that about you, yo.
Yeah.
I love, especially because we live in a world that doesn't provide the same opportunities depending on who you are and how you look and where you come from. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So for somebody to own their knowledge, and it does make me think about ancestral knowledge even. Like we have a knowing that's inside of us, that's instinctual, that's innate. And you don't need nobody to tell you, oh yeah, Liza, you have, or oh Eli. You know what I'm saying? It's just a way of it existing and being.
Yeah.
And a centering, I feel like.
I appreciate you saying that, because oftentimes people are not thinking about what they already have within them because they haven't learned to trust themselves first. You know what I mean? And it's very important for you to first affirm that you trust yourself. If you have the ability to be a mother, nobody else can teach you that except your mothering skills, which is coming from somewhere. That may be coming from your ancestors. It could be coming from wherever. But the reality is you're mastering it. You're doing that. You know what I mean? So you have to trust yourself to be able to say, I got this and I'm doing it. You know what I mean? So I support that all the way. Because I learned mothering from my mother, but at the same time, it was a hands-on job that I had to just figure out. You know what I mean? Because I had this baby with me,
And the blessing of that, right, is like we're programmed for it.
Yeah.
By the decree of the Most High, right? The design is, we know what love is. We know what love feels like. That's familiar. That's home. That doesn't take a lot of science. You don't need, it's like when you love somebody, you don't ask yourself, do I love that person?
Yeah.
You know. It's like when you see someone beautiful, you don't think, do I think they're beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
You really know that brother is fine.
Exactly. I appreciate that honesty, because oftentimes, people have been programmed so much to believe that I have to speak this way, I have to love this way, I have to even act this way. And on another episode, we were talking about this idea of the 5 love languages, and although I believe that and I support it, I also don't believe there are only 5. I think everybody has their own, and it's very important for you to understand what they are, you know what I mean, and support it. Sometimes you have to ask questions, but sometimes I don't need to know that my son likes to be talked to in this way. That's the way he likes communication, or he loves this particular thing. And that comes from my innate ability to understand his love languages. And there's 5, that exist.
I remember when that was real big, that 5 love languages thought and book, and and I always kind of shied away from it because I was like, I am not about to take this little, it's almost like a test you take. And I'm like, I come back with 5,000 love languages, and they're gonna be like, oh, she needy, or she demanding, or it's just too much. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good at, like you said, and knowing that, of course, there is a million ways to love.
Yeah, and you just have to be open to it. So this next question is directed at our young men first. And I want to ask you, and Nafis, this question is for you too. As young men who may one day be fathers, do you think you will choose the option to unschool your children?
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
I might like.
You can think about it. We come back to you. Don't feel no pressure at all.
Yeah, no. The thing is, it's just like I'm thinking about like my future and how I envision it, and like my goals. Where I see myself living and who I see myself with, and like I don't know. Who knows? I think that whole question just brought up like
a whole different list of things. So first,
like,
let's pull it back. Let's pull it back. And first, I'll ask: do you foresee yourself becoming a father? And have you thought about that in detail, or is that something you're still working through in your mind? Which is totally.
I can see myself becoming a father.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want kids.
Okay. All right, Ezra, what about you?
I think the only thing is I know I want a boy and a girl, but I feel like I can't control if I have a boy and a girl.
Okay.
So,
All right, I'll tell you. Okay, how about you, Nafis?
I definitely say the same thing. I
The
do.
same thing as who?
Oh no, just becoming a father. Yeah.
You want to become a father.
Mhm.
Do you think you're going to homeschool your children, or what do you think you're going to do? Have you thought about that? And are you still thinking about it?
I don't know about homeschooling. Only the reason why it's kind of like the point that Sister Liza touched on about, or no, it was Eli. Just having those certain experiences, and the only way to have those experiences are being being in those situations. So such, private school is going to be a much different situation than private school, and just
Private school is going to be a different situation than what?
the
Homeschool?
public school.
Oh, okay.
Or homeschool, or just either one. It's gonna be a lot different in the communities or the networks or the people that you're around. So definitely, I feel like just putting yourself or putting your kids in a situation so they can really understand for themselves of how what makes them frustrated or what do they like about the school or whatever.
Yeah, for our listeners, Nafis was homeschooled, when he was younger. And he also went to public school. He went to private school. And as a mom, I had to learn his learning style. I don't know if homeschooling is best for every single person. It's based on their learning style. Just every learning environment is not exactly the best for every particular child. So I think it's important, for anybody listening to know whether you have a young man or a young woman, what your child's learning style is, so that you can be open with conversation about if they are interested in having children one day that they may put in school, what type of schooling environment they may be interested in, so you can offer support in that conversation. But everybody's going to be different, and that's completely fine, But it's good to think about it, so that because for me, I didn't have any idea what I was doing when I started homeschooling him. I didn't know that he's the type of person that needs to learn in an environment that's very small and it's, hands-on. There's not a lot of tests all day, stuff like that. But I didn't know that till I learned, on-the-job training. So that was our experience. Next question.
The next question is, as an entrepreneur family, you have made the decision to do what some refer to as uncareering, meaning you are charting your own course. As your young adults have participated in this process, can you please share what discussion you all engage in to guide and support each other through the uncareering process?
We mostly speak about just what we're passionate about. Like, what do you love? What is it that calls you, and what is that centered in? Not only like what you love, but like what's the root of that thing? You know what I'm saying? Do you feel like whatever you're pursuing represents you honestly? Or do you feel okay with how you're representing yourself with it? So, I mean, we're always having conversations about creative endeavors and pursuits and ideas. We all have like so many ideas that we're always bouncing ideas off each other. Something will come to mind and it's like, yo, what do you think of this? I just had this idea to do this. And it'll be like this process of refining before it gets released into the world, which is one of my favorite things with y'all. Like, I trust their creative ideas and critiques, and I love supporting their creative ideas, their own creative pursuits. That to me is where the real magic is.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that makes me think about is just like how flexible we are with what we're passionate about. I think we're all really passionate about different things at different times. So sometimes like we might have a whole different career than like we did a couple months ago, like she might be making music for 2 months or a whole year and then like might not make no music and might just make earrings or might just make masks or might just make like sneakers or, anything. And it's the same for my brother. Like, he might be D1 and then he might be like just making sandals or something like that,
Okay. But kind of what my mom said about like what we love and if we can turn that into kind of what our career is and what our job, like, can we make money off of what we love since we love doing it anyway? And that's kind of what I did with Free Buckets. Like, she helped me out a lot with that. She was like, I think I was talking to her for a while about, I can just see it. I can see it on a shirt because every time I go to, it started off with me. Every time I go to a gym, I would start scoring on people, and I would start screaming. I would start saying free buckets, and everybody in the gym was
affirmation.
Yeah. And then, so I told my mom, I was like, man, I can see it. Like, I can see it on a shirt. I can see it on a wristband. Like, I can see a brand out of it just from me doing it. And I love playing basketball. So we did it, and then it did okay. So.
Yeah, people respond to it really well. Like, as soon as he comes into a gym, like they call him by that name now even. Like, yo, what up, free buckets? You know what I'm saying? So I think it has a lot to do with whatever you feel passionate about. Like, if you feel passionate about it, then other people, like, you know, then that resonates with other people.
Yeah, it also comes with like for the shirt, for example, for my shirt, I knew exactly how it looked, and not so much the impact it was going to have on other people, but I knew what the design was going to look like. I didn't have to ask anybody what the design was going to look like. So I was like, what do you think about it being on a shirt? And once I had my mom's like, yeah, go ahead, do it, I was like, that made me feel so much better. So I did it. And like she said, the impact is kind of fun to see.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys are blessed. You know, I can't, I wish I could say our situation was exactly the same, but it's not. You know, we grew up in a family that was real big on, this is how you have to do things, and then this leads to that, and that leads to that, you know. And both Nafis and I both went through a situation where we got to college and realized, like, I don't want to do any of this. You know, I want to do something completely different. And I'm a parent now dealing with that with him now, you know, with him starting school with a major, and I'm thinking, this is how this is going to go. You know, mid-semester, he says, hey, I don't want to do any of this. You know, so I had to learn how to chart our different course. And that was very difficult for me, you know what I mean? Because I just hadn't been, you know, trained to really think like that. And so now that we're in a different space, it's been actually pretty liberating to see him making decisions that he really is living and happy with, you know what I mean? And me knowing that I used to be like that and I didn't have the freedom to do that. So I refused to allow him to do the exact same thing I had to do, where it's like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because this is what my parents want me to do, you know? So y'all are ahead of us, you know, with that. What'd you say?
Oh, no, I was just saying, I think that's like really important too, because I think it was the first podcast that y'all did. You talked about like how close of a relationship that, you know, single mothers have with son, and like him telling you mid-semester, like, yo, I'm not doing this. That's only because you had a good relationship. If you guys didn't talk as much as y'all do, who knows what he would have said and where he would have been right now, or where you would have been right now.
It's true. I appreciate you saying that, you know, because a lot of people here listening to this podcast are like, what kind of family do you have that y'all just sit having conversations all the time? You know what I mean? But the reality is, it's just been me and him. You know, I became a single mom when he was, in utero, you know, when I was pregnant with him. I became a single mother, you know. And for our listeners, and if his father is listening, I always say I'm single parent raising him, but his father is present. You know, he supports him. He knows who he is, and he's active in his life, you know. But as far as our relationship is concerned, it's just been he and I. And I make sure that I, you know, separate those things, because oftentimes fathers are left out of the conversation who are active, you know, and in support of their children. And my son's father is, you know, supportive. But as far as our relationship is concerned, he and I weren't together while I was raising my son. And I'm grateful for what we have, and that the fact that he comes and, you know, we can talk about this type of stuff. And the fact that it led to this podcast, you know, with us having guests like y'all, you know, who, you know, you have a single mother as well who's done an amazing job with all of y'all, you know. And so I appreciate both all of y'all being here. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. So our next question is about advice. What advice can you offer to our listeners who are raising young adults who have an interest in choosing the non-traditional route in both their academic and career paths?
I have to say, do it. If you're unsure about it, DM free buckets and I'll text you back.
I like that. You got advice. That's what's up. Ask Ezra.
I don't charge that much either. No, I'm good.
Right.
I think I would just offer to remember your own experience when you were coming up. You know, like, we're the same. You are my other me. So, you know, even generationally, there's a time that that you probably experienced something in your younger years that you didn't, you felt your passion pulling you, but you were told to do something other. You know what I'm saying? So I would just offer you to just reflect back on all of the things that you wanted to fulfill that you didn't, and like gift that to this person. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're all on our personal journeys, and it's just an exploration, yo. And here's the thing. You go to college and you drop out, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? You go to college, you stay in college, and you get a job. It's still okay. Like, it's the nature of life. It's okay. It's gonna be all right.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a learning experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would say what I would say to that is, like, plenty of times. At times, I've looked to my mom and been like, been trying to figure something out, and she'll be like, yo, I'm trying to figure that out too, like.
That's
like,
that's honesty.
Yeah.
What about you?
I would just say, and if any advice, make sure if there's something that you're very passionate in, definitely do the research, and also try to find it to present it in your own unique way, so you're not feeling like you're copying off of somebody, or you feel like you was super passionate about it and now you're not. So definitely, just
because somebody else is doing it.
So definitely do the research. Also take the courage to do it, because if you don't believe in yourself, then no one else will. And you can talk about the idea, you can talk about it, but if you're not doing it, then it's going to be a much more different experience, because you can definitely say that you want to do it, but then there's no work in actually doing it.
No action. Yeah, I agree with. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You were gonna say something?
I was gonna say, just that's so important, that when you have an idea, just like a lot of it is trusting your intuition. Like, oh, I got this thing, let me put it out into the world. And I feel like the more that you trust that and you put that into the world, the more space you have for another ideal to come to you that you can put out into the world. A lot of times, I know personally over the years, I know that if I have an idea and if I don't act on it, it like resides with me and takes up space in a way that I don't have room for. It's like yearning to grow. It wants to be released. It wants to, it's just a matter of making space. Like, I'm gonna release that and here come another one. And it's like a continuous flow. So yeah, man, just trust your intuition. A lot of times, like research, you're right, research does matter. But a lot of times it don't even have to be about the research, right? It's just like a feeling like, yo, let me post this picture. You ever do that, like on social media, you post something that you think, oh, I just love this, and not really think about it. And then the response is like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
exactly. Go with your heart.
I like that. I would say that one of my biggest pieces of advice for mothers and, fathers raising young adults is to open a conversation about this topic and allow it to be very open and free. Oftentimes parents don't hear these things unless there's a child who has refused to follow the path, that they've set for them. And that's the first time they'll have a conversation about creativity or, thoughts that they're having at all. And as opposed to having open conversations and just checking in and saying, hey, how's everything going with you? And, if you were to create something, what would that look like? Because the part of trusting yourself is checking in with yourself too about what do I really love to do? What do I love to do that has nothing to do with no one else? This is what I actually love to do. We always ask that question, if you could retire today with so many $1 million, what would you be doing? A lot of people think that's such a far-fetched, plan, when in reality it's something you could start now. It doesn't have to be something that you have so much money to do, because everything starts as an idea. So yeah. I would say open the conversations about it and be open and trusting and fair, with your young adults and with your family about the conversation. And follow up too, because sometimes people allow their young adults to have conversations about creativity, but they don't really believe it's really anything true. So they'd be like, oh, yeah, okay. And really just hoping that they'll forget it, and not come back to it. So that's what I would say. Next question.
Is there any advice you would like to offer to our listeners whose families have chosen this route and received backlash from others?
Oh, backlash?
Yeah, everybody don't like this idea of unschooling and uncareering, So what advice would you all offer to our listeners who have chosen this route and people in their family like, that's whack, that's not going to work, we don't support that?
Wow. I don't think that we
I don't got much to say to the haters.
Yeah. It's like y'all heard that thing that said like, what you think of me is none of my business. You know what I'm saying? It makes me think of that. It's like, it doesn't really, like, what you think of me is for you.
Wow, I love that. That shuts everything down. It's just like, it ends it, you know? Because it's the reality. It's not my responsibility what you came up with. You know, that's on you.
Yeah, you feel me?
I really like that.
Yeah, definitely when it comes to backlash. When it comes to like constructive criticism though, I'm accepting and like willing to hear it out though, you know. Because I think the whole point about this is just about like broadening your perspective.
Yeah.
So if you're hearing something that's like beneficial to you, be willing to receive information that will benefit you.
Okay.
And I think the backlash part of it may come from, I don't know if it does, but it may come from a lack of communication and like a trusting, truthful relationship that you have with the person in your family, you know?
I like that. What about you?
I'd definitely say to offer advice, if there's anything that you want to do, just provide it in a way that can be very understanding and not come
To your family.
To your family or to whoever you're saying it to, and not to come off as disrespectful or anything. Because sometimes when you present ideas or different things that you want to do, some people might take it as, oh, you know, what I've done for you is, you know, you're not liking what I've done for you and you're not accepting of that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's not what I'm saying, but I just want you to understand, like, you know, I'm trying to do something else that, you know,
chart my own path.
That, you know, that might look something totally different, but I don't want you to think that I'm not taking in what you've taught me or, you know, what the stuff that you give me advice on. Mm-hmm. But also, like you guys said, just, you know, that is none of my business, and definitely to be headstrong and be focused on what you got going on.
Yeah.
Okay. And for our last question, is there any advice you'd like to offer on this topic that we didn't touch on? So, any parting words for our listeners? Anything we haven't touched on?
I don't know.
Not that comes immediately to mind. I think for me, the thing that's most on my heart is just grateful for you providing this platform, like for you and your son moving forward with just what we're talking about even. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, this is something I think that is important and we should put it out into the world. And, you know, yeah, just offering a platform to have honest conversations and to have transparency.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. You know, we have received strangely backlash from creating this, which is interesting, you know, because I didn't have that response that you guys gave. I wish I had it, you know, at first, to be able to say what you think of me is not my business, you know. But it's interesting that I've learned that there's a lot of people who have not learned how to communicate with their children or even themselves in a healthy way. And so when they see others doing it, it's almost like a threat to them. Like, how dare you communicate healthy? And it's like, what do you mean? How does that, you know, how is that a danger to you? But I realize that people have been in such sick relationships their whole lives, you know, that they don't know what healthy relationships look like, you know. And so I appreciate you all, you know, for being here, and also for us, you know, taking this step to move forward, because we've talked about this for a long time, you know what I mean? And we did decide, you know, let's just see what happens, because there's other mothers that have great advice to offer that we don't have, that we're in need of, you know, to help to facilitate a healthy relationship with he and I. So we're grateful for you all sharing that with us. You got any last advice to offer?
The only advice I would say is just what you said. Basically, just try to make those uncomfortable conversations comfortable.
Okay.
So when you get into these spaces, you don't have to feel like you're able to say what you really want to say, and you're able to express yourself and just be free.
I love that. Honesty is the biggest policy. Just be honest and vulnerable and open and free. Because the reality is we all, like I always tell my son, all somebody can ever tell you is no if you ask them for something, and then you can move on. You don't have to dwell on it. You know what I mean? But being honest along the way is the most important part. And before we close, I do want to ask again, how do people get in touch with you?
I think Ezra.
Oh, sorry, Ezra.
Oh, you saw me raise my hand? No, I just had one question. One last question is, when did Nafis get so handsome?
Probably around the same time you got so handsome. both of y'all just on a handsome route.
That's the path they decided on.
That's my career choice.
Right. That's their career choice.
Y'all are hilarious. What is your Instagram though, Liza, or you guys? How do people get in touch with you?
So my Instagram is LizaGarza, Liza Garza. And you can find me like on, Facebook or whatever, Twitter. It's all pretty much the same.
Yeah, and for me it'll be Eli Lakes, ELILAKES.
And then for me, it'll be _freebuckets_.
Yeah.
I'm working on getting just free buckets, so that's in the progress right now.
And then we also, me and Eli, our duo, our band page is Grow Official Music. But you can reach that from either one of our pages.
Okay, cool. All right, well, this has been another episode of Between Us and Y'all. We want to thank our guests for being here. We've learned a lot, and appreciate your example of a family who has been open and definitely unschooling with life and with your career path. So we appreciate that. Did you want to say something before we close?
I have one more thing to say.
Sure.
The first person to DM Free Buckets and says that they heard the podcast will get a free shirt.
Oh, wow. I love that. That's what's up.
Yeah.
All right. And as we part, we always like to encourage our listeners to work hard, to pray hard, love hard, and definitely spend some time together playing hard.
Yes.
Thank you guys for being here.
All right. Peace.
For having us.
Peace, thank y'all.